The town of Mill Creek was small and quiet, hidden between green hills and wide fields. People there lived simple lives, waking early to work on their farms, feeding animals, and gathering in the diner at night to share stories. It was a place where everybody knew each other, where doors were left unlocked and where the loudest noise at night was the sound of crickets. One summer evening, the sky above Mill Creek changed. At first, it was just a few strange lights dancing high above the hills, moving in ways no airplane could. They zipped and spun, stopping too fast, then sliding across the stars as if the sky itself was bending. Children pointed and shouted, "Look, fireworks!" But the lights were silent, with no sound at all. Dogs barked wildly, horses in the fields kicked and ran in circles, and the old radios inside homes began to hiss with static. Sheriff Daniels was sipping coffee in his office when his radio crackled and died. He frowned, tapped it, and tried to call the station in the next county, but nothing worked. The phone lines were dead too, and even his car engine struggled when he tried to start it. Something in the air was making machines weak, as if the whole town was wrapped in an invisible hand squeezing tight. Up on the ridge, an old farmer named Clark was watching the sky through his binoculars. His hands shook as he muttered, "That ain't no weather balloon." Through the glass, he saw a massive shape sliding slowly across the stars. It was bigger than any plane he had ever seen, longer than the football field in town. The surface glowed with strange patterns, like living metal shifting under moonlight. It made no sound, yet the air felt heavy pressing against his chest. Back in town, people gathered on Main Street, pointing at the lights now multiplying in the sky. Some said it was a secret military test. Others whispered about UFOs. Children clung to their parents' arms while old veterans stared with narrowed eyes, recognizing something dangerous in those movements. The church bell rang by itself, swinging without anyone pulling the rope, as if some unseen force pushed it. The sound echoed through the town, deep and cold. Suddenly, all the streetlights blinked out. Darkness swallowed Mill Creek except for the strange blue glow above. Gas pumps at the station sparked, then went dead. Inside the diner, the jukebox screeched a broken note before falling silent. People whispered nervously, their voices carrying through the empty street. Sheriff Daniels stood in the middle of the road, one hand on his holster, though he knew no pistol could help. "Everyone stay calm," he called, his voice firm, though his heart pounded. But calm was impossible when the sky itself split open. From behind the hills, a giant craft descended slowly, its shadow stretching across the fields. It was not like the flying saucers from movies. It was a massive wedge-shaped ship, sharp and endless, with glowing lines across its body. It hovered above the town, blocking out the stars. A deep hum filled the air, rattling windows and shaking the ground. Animals broke from barns and ran through the fields crying in fear. The sheriff's car alarm screamed by itself. Even though the car was dead a moment ago, the townsfolk clutched each other, staring upward. Some prayed, others cursed, but none looked away. Then a single beam of light shot down, striking the old power station on the edge of town. The building erupted in flames, sparks flying like fireworks across the sky. The explosion lit up the terrified faces of Mill Creek's people. Children screamed, mothers pulled them close, and the old veterans clenched their fists. It was not just a show of power, it was the first strike. As the flames burned, dozens of smaller lights detached from the great ship. They were drones, metallic and sharp, spinning with eerie speed. They spread through the town, hovering above rooftops, scanning with red beams that cut through walls and windows. One drone zapped a tractor, melting it to glowing metal. Another fired into the sheriff's office, blasting the radio to pieces. It was clear what they wanted. They were not here to visit. They were here to erase. The sheriff looked at his people, his jaw tight. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also the fire. This was their home, their families, their land. If these things thought they could erase Mill Creek, they would learn the hard way that rural folk did not bow easy. As the drones circled and the giant warship pulsed above, a single thought passed through the town, shared by every farmer, every mother, every old soldier who had once fought in wars far away. We will not be erased. The night grew colder. The stars vanished behind the dark hull of the alien ship. Mill Creek stood under the shadow of something not from this world. But in that shadow, seeds of resistance began to grow. The aliens believed they had chosen an easy target, a small forgotten town. They did not yet know they had awakened the fierce spirit of Earth's rural warriors. And soon they would learn what that spirit could do. The flames from the old power station still burned high into the night. The fire painted the sky red and orange, reflecting in the terrified eyes of the people of Mill Creek. Smoke drifted across the fields, thick and bitter, stinging noses and making children cough. The alien ship hovered above the town like a mountain of steel and shadow, unmoving, watching as if waiting for the right moment to strike again. Sheriff Daniels stood in the center of Main Street, his hat pulled low, his hand resting on his holster, though he knew his pistol was useless. Beside him stood 3 veterans of old wars: Hank, a farmer who had once fought in the desert; Ruth, a tough old nurse who had seen battlefields in her youth; and Joe, who still carried the scars of combat across his arms. They exchanged silent looks, each of them knowing the truth. This was no random attack. The aliens wanted Mill Creek gone, erased from the map, wiped away as if it had never existed. From the great warship above, dozens more drones poured into the sky like a swarm of metal hornets. Their eyes glowed red, their movements sharp and perfect. The townsfolk screamed as beams of light cut through buildings, setting roofs on fire and turning cars into molten wrecks. A single drone swooped low over the diner, blasting the neon sign into sparks. Another fired on the church steeple, splintering wood and sending the old bell crashing to the ground with a deafening clang. The people scattered, ducking into alleys, grabbing children, dragging the elderly to cover. But even as fear surged, anger rose with it. This was their home, their land, and these invaders thought they could wipe it away without a fight. Sheriff Daniels shouted over the chaos, his voice strong enough to cut through the screams and fire. "Get to the mine. Everyone who can fight. Get to the old iron mine." He remembered the forgotten tunnels up in the ridge, a place where metal in the rock could block signals, the perfect place to hide, the perfect place to plan, but not everyone could run. Some stayed behind to slow the enemy. Farmer Clark pulled out his old hunting rifle and fired at a drone, the bullet bouncing harmlessly off its shell. The drone turned, its red eye glowing. But before it could fire, Hank leaped from behind a truck with a shotgun, blasting it point blank. The shot cracked the drone's glass eye, sending it spinning to the ground in a burst of sparks. For the first time that night, the townsfolk cheered, a flicker of hope burning in their fear. But hope was fragile. Above them, the warship shifted, its underbelly glowing with strange light. A second beam shot down, this time striking the water tower on the edge of town. The tank exploded, water rushing into the streets like a broken river, drowning fires but flooding homes. The ground shook so violently that windows shattered for blocks. The people realized the aliens were not just attacking, they were erasing. Destroy the power, destroy the water, destroy the homes, until nothing remained. It was a plan to make Mill Creek vanish as if it had never been. The sheriff's group guided the survivors toward the ridge. Toward the mine, children stumbled through mud. Mothers carried infants, and men with bleeding hands pulled the wounded along. Every step was haunted by the red glow of drones hunting above. As they reached the edge of the forest, Ruth turned back and saw the main street burning, the diner in flames, the church collapsed, and the old general store crushed beneath falling rubble. Her heart ached, but her jaw tightened. She whispered, "They want to erase us, but they'll never erase who we are." In the woods, the people moved under the thick canopy of trees. The drones scanned the ground but struggled to see through the leaves. For now, the forest gave them cover. They pressed on toward the dark mouth of the abandoned mine, its old wooden beams sagging like tired bones. Inside the mine, the air was damp and heavy with the smell of rust and dust. It was cold, but it felt safe, the iron walls shielding them from the alien eyes above. The sheriff lit an old lantern, its weak flame casting shadows across the rock. "We hold here," he said firmly, "and we fight back." Hank, wiping sweat from his brow, nodded. "These hills raised us hard, Sheriff. We know every ridge, every creek, every shadow. We'll make them pay for every inch they take. Joe slammed his fist into the wall, sparks of rock falling. They don't know who they're fighting. They think we're weak, but we're not. We're stubborn, we're strong, and this is our land. As they spoke, the young hacker, a boy named Luke, barely out of high school, fiddled with a broken radio and a salvaged drone piece he had grabbed during the escape. The static cleared. For a brief moment, and through it came alien voices, cold, sharp, speaking in strange tones. Luke's eyes widened. They're not stopping here. They're going to wipe the whole valley, every town, every farm. Mill Creek is just the beginning. Silence filled the mine, the people staring at one another with dread and fire in their hearts. They had lost their homes, their streets, their church, their water, their lights. But they had not lost themselves. The first strike had come, but the war had only just begun. Outside, the alien ship loomed like a black mountain against the stars. Its lights glowed cold and cruel, but in the darkness of the mine, the people of Mill Creek began to plan. The invaders thought the first strike had broken them. Instead, it had awakened them. And soon, the aliens would learn what it meant to face Earth's rural warriors. The mine was dark and endless, its walls wet with dripping water, its wooden beams groaning like old bones under the weight of the mountain. The townsfolk of Mill Creek huddled inside, their lanterns glowing weakly against the black stone. Children clung to their mothers, old men sat on broken crates, and young farmers carried rifles across their laps, though bullets had little effect against alien steel. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of frightened breathing. Sheriff Daniels stood near the entrance, his eyes scanning. The woods outside, he could still see the glow of fire from the town below, the smoke rising into the night. It felt like watching his home die, each flame a memory being erased, his fists clenched at his sides, his voice low. They think they can wipe us away. They'll see what happens when country folk dig in. Deeper inside the mine, Luke, the young hacker, sat on the cold floor with his radio and the broken alien drone part. He twisted wires together, sparks flicking in the dark, his face lit by the glow of tiny lights. The sheriff walked over and crouched beside him. "Anything?" he asked. Luke nodded slowly, his voice tight with fear. "I picked up their signal again, Sheriff. They aren't here just for us. They plan to erase the whole valley, every town, every farm, every person." Gasps rippled through the people listening. Ruth, the old nurse, put a hand over her mouth, whispering, "The whole valley." Hank's jaw tightened as he gripped his shotgun. "Then we've got no choice. We fight now, or we all disappear." An old map of the mine lay on a table, its paper yellow and cracked. Joe unrolled it with shaking hands. This place was used back in World War II. The army hid weapons and fuel down here in case the fight ever reached our soil. Most folks forgot. But my grandfather used to tell me stories. He pointed to a blocked tunnel deep inside marked with an old military stamp. If we dig through, we might just find something left behind. Hope stirred in the dark. The people grabbed shovels, picks, and even their bare hands clawing through the dirt and collapsed rock. The sound of digging echoed like drums of war. Children passed buckets of rubble. Women carried lanterns closer and sweat rolled down faces. Every strike of a shovel was a promise. They would not die quietly. Hours passed, and at last, a hollow sound rang out. The shovel struck metal. The people froze, staring as Joe and Hank cleared the last of the dirt. Behind the wall was an iron door, rusted but still strong. On it, the faded mark of the old U.S. Army, with a heavy push. The door groaned open. Inside was a forgotten chamber filled with crates, barrels, and dust thick as snow. They broke open the first crate and gasped. Rifles, grenades, boxes of old dynamite. Another crate held uniforms, radios, and even rolls of wire. The townsfolk stared in awe. It was as if history itself had waited here for this night, as if the past had left them a gift. Sheriff Daniels lifted a rifle, weighing it in his hands. "It's old, but it'll do. These weapons fought Nazis once. Now they'll fight something worse." Luke's eyes lit up when he found a crate filled with batteries and spare radio parts. This is perfect. I can use this to boost the signal and listen deeper, maybe even send something back at them. The people worked quickly, dividing supplies, loading weapons, checking the crates. Every rusty rifle and stick of dynamite became a symbol of defiance. The fear in their eyes was still there, but now it mixed with fire. Outside, the drones searched the woods, their red eyes sweeping like knives. One hovered too close to the mine entrance. The sheriff raised his rifle, aiming carefully. One shot cracked and the bullet hit the drone's glowing eye. Sparks exploded, the machine falling lifeless to the ground. The people cheered softly, their spirits lifting. They had proven they could strike back. But then Luke's radio hissed and the alien voices grew louder. The strange language twisted in their ears, but some words were clear enough. Erase, 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 the valley must burn, no record, no witness, no life. Luke's face went pale. They're sending ground troops, Sheriff. Not just drones, real soldiers, and they're coming tonight. The mine filled with a tense silence. Mothers held their children tighter. Fathers gripped weapons. Old veterans exchanged grim nods. They had only hours before the next wave came, but this time, they were ready. The sheriff's voice rose above the fear, steady and strong. We know these hills, we know these woods, they may have warships and firepower, but we've got something they don't. We've got grit. We've got heart. And this is our home. The townsfolk raised their weapons, their voices joining in a low growl of agreement. The sound filled the mine, echoing off the walls like thunder. They were no longer just survivors, they were warriors, and soon, the invaders would discover what that meant. Deep in the woods, the first alien soldiers stepped from their landing craft, tall and armored, their weapons glowing like fire. Their eyes scanned the darkness, their voices hissing commands. They moved with confidence, believing humans were nothing but prey. But hidden in the shadows of the hills, Mill Creek waited. The mine was no longer a place of fear. It was the heart of rebellion. And in the darkness, Earth's rural warriors sharpened their claws. The night over Mill Creek was no longer quiet. Alien drones circled in the sky like hunting birds, their red eyes glowing as they searched the forests. On the hills, landing crafts had touched down, and tall alien soldiers now marched into the valley with weapons that pulsed like living fire. Their boots crushed grass and dirt, their armor shining under the cold blue light of their warship above. The invaders moved with confidence, believing the humans were broken, scattered, and weak. But deep inside the old mine, the people of Mill Creek prepared their answer. The hidden chamber full of weapons had armed them with rifles, grenades, and dynamite. Luke had rewired the alien drone they had captured, its glowing red eye now flickering with strange blue light under his control. It buzzed softly in the shadows. No longer an enemy, but a new tool. The sheriff stood at the front of the group, his weathered face hard, his rifle resting in his hands. They think we'll lie down and die, but tonight, they'll learn what it means to fight on our soil. The plan was simple: lure the aliens into the fields, trap them and hit them with everything they had. The land itself would become their weapon. The farmers knew every fence, every ditch, every tree that could hide a man or a charge of dynamite. They moved through the woods in silence, splitting into small groups. One group carried old fuel barrels from the mine, rolling them into barns, and haystacks, turning them into firebombs. Another group wired dynamite to fences and posts, strings running through the grass like hidden veins. Old veterans climbed onto rooftops with rifles, setting up sniper nests. Even children and teenagers helped, carrying lanterns and passing bullets, their eyes wide but fierce. The town was burning behind them, but in the fields the trap was ready. The sheriff raised his hand, signaling silence. The people crouched low, waiting, their breath misting in the night air. The first squad of alien soldiers entered the wheat fields. Their glowing weapons cut through stalks of grain as they moved in tight formation. They scanned the ground with beams of red light, searching for human life. One of them hissed in its strange tongue, and the others laughed coldly, certain the hunt would be easy. Then the sheriff gave the signal. Hank lit the fuse of a fuel barrel hidden inside a barn, the fire racing fast up the straw. In seconds, the barn exploded, a fireball tearing the night apart. The blast knocked 3 alien soldiers off their feet, their armor burning as flames swallowed them. The rest shouted in panic. They're perfect. Formation broken. Gunfire cracked from the trees. The snipers on the rooftops fired, bullets bouncing off some armor but striking weak spots in joints and necks. One alien dropped with a scream, green blood spraying into the wheat. Another staggered, clutching its chest before falling face first into the dirt. The aliens returned fire, beams of energy cutting trees in half and blasting holes in the ground. The night lit up with fire and thunder, but the humans kept moving, using the land as their shield, striking from shadows, disappearing and striking again. Ruth, the old nurse, carried grenades she had found in the crates. She pulled the pin and hurled one at a squad moving near the church ruins. The explosion sent bodies flying, smoke rolling through the air. She shouted, "That's for our people." Her voice fierce and shaking, Luke sent the reprogrammed drone, flying overhead. Its red eye now blue. It zipped through the sky and fired at the alien soldiers below, catching them off guard. They turned their weapons on it, confused as one of their own machines betrayed them. That moment of hesitation was enough. Joe and his group rushed forward with rifles and dynamite, blasting another squad apart. The aliens had expected prey, but they had found wolves. Every field became a battlefield, every barn a trap, every fence a weapon. The land itself fought with its people. But victory came at a cost. One of the barns collapsed after a beam strike, trapping 2 young men inside. Their screams cut through the battle before silence fell. The sheriff clenched his jaw, grief burning in his chest. But he could not stop. If they faltered now, the whole valley would fall. The alien commander on the warship above roared in anger as reports of fallen soldiers reached him. Through his screens, he saw the chaos below, primitive humans using fire and steel to defy his troops. He slammed his clawed hand on the console. Burn the countryside, no survivors, no traces, erase them all. Down on the ground, the remaining alien soldiers pulled back, calling for heavy support. The humans retreated into the woods, breathing hard, their faces blackened with soot and smoke. They had lost friends, but they had won their first real battle, for the first time. The aliens had bled in the mine that night. The people gathered again, battered but alive. Lantern light flickered across tired faces, but hope burned in their eyes. The sheriff spoke, his voice carrying the weight of what had just happened. They thought we would bow, but we stood, and now they know. This fight is just beginning. Luke raised the captured drone, its blue light pulsing stronger now. If I can reprogram one, I can reprogram more. We can turn their own weapons against them. We can make them fear us. The people nodded, their fear turning to determination. The first counterattack had worked, and now they were ready for more. The aliens had seen Mill Creek as a target, a place to erase, but tonight the invaders had learned something new. The rural warriors of Earth would not vanish quietly, and soon, the aliens would discover that the spirit of Mill Creek was more dangerous than any weapon. High above Mill Creek, the alien warship burned with frustration. Inside its dark command chamber, glowing with shifting lights and humming with alien machines, the commander paced. He was tall and sharp, with armor grown into his skin, his eyes like burning coals behind a mask of steel. His claws clicked against the metal floor as he turned to his officers, his voice like thunder. These humans are primitive, yet they resist. They should be erased like dust, yet they wound. Our soldiers, unacceptable. A trembling officer bowed, his hands shaking. Commander, their weapons are old, their machines weak, but their tactics are fierce. They fight as if their land itself obeys them. The commander slammed his hand. On the console, sparks flying. Land means nothing. Warships mean power, and power destroys. He pointed at the holographic map of the valley, glowing above the table. Burn it all, not just the town, not just the farms. Scorch the hills, poison the rivers, erase the memory of this place. The officers obeyed, sending new commands through the ship. Moments later, the great warship roared, its engines glowing brighter. From its belly, larger machines dropped, walking war units taller than houses, armed with cannons that hummed with deadly light. The countryside shook as they landed, their heavy steps crushing fields, trees snapping, Beneath their weight, the war was no longer about drones and soldiers. It was about destruction. Down in the mine, the people of Mill Creek listened as the ground above trembled. Dirt fell from the ceiling, rocks shook loose, children cried in their mother's arms. The sheriff held up a lantern, his face grim. They're bringing something bigger. The fight's about to get harder. Luke worked furiously with the captured drone, its glowing blue eye blinking as he connected wires and circuits. His hands were cut and bruised, but he didn't stop. If I can push their signal back, I can blind their scouts, maybe even turn some of their walkers against them. He bit his lip, sweat dripping. But I need more power. These old batteries won't hold long. Ruth placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. You'll have it, boy. We'll find you what you need. Meanwhile, Hank and Joe studied the old crates of dynamite. Explosives like this can bring down a mine shaft, even a bridge. If we set them right, maybe they can bring down one of those walking monsters too. They exchanged a look, a grim smile between warriors who knew what was coming. That night, the people prepared once again. Farmers filled jars with gasoline, making fire bombs. Hunters sharpened blades and cleaned rifles. Mothers wrapped bandages and tore cloth for the wounded. Every hand, young or old, had a task. The mine had become more than a hiding place. It had become a war room. Up above, the alien walkers marched toward the ridge, their cannons firing. Blasts of green energy into the forest. Trees exploded. The sky lit with fire. Animals fled in terror. The commander watched through his screens. His voice sharp. Crush them. Let the survivors choke on ash. But the humans did not wait to be crushed. The sheriff led his fighters through hidden trails, their steps silent, their hearts steady. They moved like shadows between the trees, carrying dynamite, rifles, and Molotovs. At the top of the ridge, they looked down at the massive machines, their glowing eyes sweeping the land. Now, the sheriff whispered. The first explosion shook the earth as dynamite buried in a fence. Line went off. One walker stumbled, its leg tearing apart in fire, crashing sideways into the ground. Cheers rose from the humans hidden in the trees. Another volley came from the rooftops of barns that still stood. Snipers fired at glowing joints while Molotovs arced through the air, smashing against alien metal, flames clinging to armor. The battle roared. Alien walkers fired their cannons, tearing holes in the forest, sending dirt and trees flying. One blast struck a farmhouse, the explosion so fierce it lit the sky. The humans ducked, rolled, and kept moving, striking from every angle, never giving the machines a clear target. Inside, the warship, the commander's rage grew. He slammed his claw against the console, his voice a growl. These humans fight like vermin. They scatter, they bite, they do not surrender. They must be crushed completely. Back on the ground, Luke's drone zipped into the air, its blue light pulsing as it hacked into the alien. Systems. The great walkers stuttered, their movements jerking, their cannons freezing for a moment. Luke shouted, "It's working, Sheriff. I've got control for a few seconds." "Use it," Daniels barked. Luke forced the drone to send a false command, and one walker suddenly turned its cannon on its own kind, blasting another in a storm of fire. The humans cheered, their spirits blazing higher. For the first time, alien weapons destroyed alien machines, but the victory was short. The commander overrode the control, forcing the machines back to order. He hissed with fury. "They dare touch our code. They dare use our tools against us, then let them see true fire." The warship's belly began to glow, energy building like a storm. It was preparing a strike far greater than before, one that could burn the entire ridge. Down in the woods, the humans saw the glow building in the sky. The sheriff clenched his fists, his voice steady though his chest burned with fear. They're not just angry now, they're desperate, and desperate enemies are the most dangerous. The people, gathered, battered and bloodied but unbroken. They had won small battles, but the war was only growing larger. The commander raged above, promising fire and death. Yet in the mine and in the hills, the humans had something the aliens could never understand. They had grit, they had unity, and they had the land itself as their ally. The night shook with the roar of warships and the cries of warriors, and as the alien commander raised his hand to order the valley's destruction, The people of Mill Creek sharpened their resolve. The fight was far from over. It was only becoming bigger, fiercer, and far more dangerous. The first light of dawn touched the valley, but it brought no peace. The fields of Mill Creek, once golden with wheat and corn, now lay scarred with smoke and craters. Alien walkers stood like steel giants across the farmland, their cannons glowing, their shadows stretching long in the morning haze above them. Drones hummed in tight formations, their red eyes sweeping the earth for human movement. The warship loomed higher still, its belly glowing with the power of something worse to come. But hidden among the fields and trees, the people of Mill Creek prepared their counterattack. The land was theirs, and they knew every hill, every ditch, every fence post. They had turned barns into traps, hay bales into bombs, and irrigation, ditches into trenches. The fields were no longer just farms. They were battlefields waiting to strike. Sheriff Daniels crouched in the tall grass, his rifle pressed against his shoulder. Beside him, Hank held a bundle of dynamite tied together with rope. His jaw set, Luke sat behind them with the hacked drone, its blue light pulsing like a heartbeat, his hands trembling as he prepared to send new commands. Ruth, carrying grenades strapped to her belt, crouched with the others, her eyes hard. They were tired. They were scared. But they were ready. The first alien squad entered the wheat field, their armor shining, their weapons humming. They marched, in perfect lines, unaware of the wires buried beneath the soil. The sheriff gave a sharp nod. Hank struck a match and lit the fuse, the flame hissing as it raced along the rope. The explosion came like thunder, blasting dirt, fire, and shards of steel into the air. Two walkers staggered, their legs ripped apart, crashing sideways into the golden stalks. The humans rose from their hiding places and opened fire, rifles cracking, Molotovs arcing through the sky. Flames spread fast, wheat fields catching fire, smoke rising high. The aliens roared in fury, their cannons blasting in every direction. One beam carved a trench through the earth, nearly taking Joe's group with it. They rolled aside just in time, dirt raining over them as the ground shook. Still they fired back, aiming for the glowing joints in the alien armor. Every shot a scream of defiance. Ruth ran forward, grenades in her hands. She pulled the pin and hurled one into a cluster of soldiers, the explosion tearing through their ranks. Her body shook from the force, but she stood tall, shouting, "This is our land." Her voice carried above the fire and smoke, giving courage to those still fighting. Meanwhile, Luke's drone zipped into the air, its blue light flashing as it hacked into the alien systems again. On the ground, one walker froze, its cannon lowering, its head turning toward its own troops. Then it fired, blasting another walker apart in a storm of green fire. Luke gasped, sweat pouring down his face. "I can hold it for a little while," he shouted. The sheriff nodded, his voice steady. "Do it, boy, every second counts." The battle spread across the valley. In one field, farmers used their tractors as cover, firing rifles from behind rusted machines. In another, teenagers tossed firebombs from tree lines, flames spreading across alien soldiers who screamed in shock. Everywhere, the land itself seemed to rise against the invaders. Fences exploded, barns burned, rivers flooded. Mill Creek fought with tooth and claw, but the aliens did not retreat easily. Their warship pulsed above, sending more drones into the fray. One walker, still standing, unleashed its cannon on a burning barn, the blast sending debris across the field. A young man named Samuel was caught in the explosion, thrown to the ground. His sister screamed his name, running toward him, but Ruth grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Tears ran down the girl's face as Samuel lay still, his body broken. The cost of resistance was heavy, but no one faltered. The alien commander watched from his ship, rage burning in his eyes. How could a small town resist his soldiers, his machines, his fire? He snarled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "They will not win. Burn the fields, burn the people, leave nothing." The warship's belly glowed, brighter, preparing to unleash a beam that could incinerate everything in sight. On the ground, Luke saw the energy spike on his hacked display, his face pale. "They're going to burn the whole valley, Sheriff. We can't stop that beam with guns." The sheriff's eyes hardened as he looked around. The fields were burning, the people were bleeding, but their spirits stood unbroken. He knew this was no longer just about Mill Creek. It was about survival, about sending a message. He raised his rifle high and shouted, "Then we bring the fight to the ship. If we can't stop their fire down here, we'll stop it up there." The people roared in answer, their voices fierce even through their grief. The countryside was still aflame, smoke rising like a signal into the sky. The aliens had learned that the land itself fought with its people, but now the battle was about to move beyond the fields, beyond the hills. The humans of Mill Creek had set fire to their land to defend it, and soon they would aim their fury. At the heart of the warship above, the valley smoldered under a sky that no longer belonged to the stars. The alien warship floated above, its vast shadow swallowing the light of morning, its belly glowing with deadly fire. Below, the fields of Mill Creek burned, the smoke curling upward like a signal of defiance. The people of the town had survived, against soldiers, drones, and walkers, but the ship above was a mountain in the sky, a beast too large for rifles and dynamite alone. Inside the mine, the survivors gathered, their faces blackened with soot, their hands raw from battle. The sheriff stood tall, his rifle across his chest, his voice steady. "If we stay on the ground, they'll burn us all. If we hide, they'll erase us, so we climb higher, we take the fight to their ship." The people looked at one another, fear in their eyes, but also fire. Hank spat into the dirt, his jaw tight. "You tell us how, Sheriff, and we'll do it. No alien steel scares me more than losing my home." Luke held up the reprogrammed drone, its blue light flickering. "I can fly this close to the mothership. I can feed it false signals, maybe open a hatch. But we'll need something big, something that can hurt it when the hatch opens." Joe tapped the crates of dynamite with a grim smile. "We've got something big. We pack their bellies with our fire and watch them choke on it." The plan was born. They would load trucks with dynamite and stolen alien fuel cells scavenged from broken machines. The trucks would be driven beneath the landing bays of the ship. The drone would trick the bay doors open, and when the trucks went up, they would turn the sky itself into fire. It was madness, but it was the only way. The people worked without rest, filling old farm trucks with explosives, tying barrels tight, wiring them together with fuses. The smell of gasoline and alien fuel mixed in the air, sharp and deadly. Luke adjusted his drone again and again, testing the signals until sweat soaked his shirt. Every mistake could mean death, but he kept working, his eyes burning with determination. That night, the convoy of trucks rolled out of the forest, engines rattling, headlights dark. The drivers were volunteers, old men and young boys, people, with nothing left to lose. The sheriff rode in the lead truck, his hat low, his rifle across his lap. He looked back at the others and raised his hand. "Tonight we end this, one way or another." The alien warship loomed above, its landing bays glowing faintly. Drones circled. But Luke's hacked signal sent false images to their scanners. The trucks appeared as nothing more than wind and smoke. For once, the hunters were blind. The convoy rumbled onto the plain beneath the warship. The ground shook as the massive craft hummed above, its lights pulsing with energy. Luke's drone zipped upward, blue light flashing as it whispered into the alien systems. He bit his lip until blood came, his hands shaking. "Come on, open, open," he whispered. And then, with a groan of alien steel, one of the landing bays slid open. A deep cavern of light and shadow yawned above the trucks. The sheriff's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening on the wheel. "Now," he growled. The drivers slammed the accelerators, the trucks roaring forward. The engines screamed. The wheels bounced over rough ground. The convoy raced straight into the belly of the beast. The aliens inside the bay shouted in their strange tongue, their glowing weapons rising. But it was too late. The sheriff yanked the fuse cord, sparks racing toward the barrels in the back. He looked up at the towering walls of the landing bay, his voice steady as stone. "This is for Mill Creek." The explosion came like the end of the world. Light and fire burst upward, ripping through the landing bay, tearing steel apart. The shockwave shook the ground for miles, glass shattering in the few homes left standing. The mothership groaned as fire spread through its underbelly, alien metal buckling and breaking. Above, Luke's drone screamed warnings across his display. "It's working, Sheriff. It's burning from the inside." The massive ship tilted, smoke pouring from its vents, secondary explosions thundering through its frame. Its shadow shifted across the valley, moving as if the mountain in the sky had been broken. Alien soldiers on the ground looked up in horror as their invincible fortress shuddered. The people of Mill Creek roared with triumph, their voices echoing across the burning fields, but victory was not yet complete. The warship, though crippled, still held fire within it. Its engines flared and its nose turned toward the earth. The commander inside, wounded but unbroken, snarled through the flames. "If I fall, I will fall on them." The sheriff saw the massive craft tilting, its bulk descending. His face tightened, but his voice did not shake. "Brace yourselves, the fight's not over yet." The mothership began its slow, terrible fall. It tore through the clouds, flames, licking its sides, its path aimed straight toward Mill Creek, the town that had refused to die. The ground rumbled, the people held their breath. The battle had torn the sky open, but the final blow had not yet come. The sheriff, Luke, Ruth, Hank, and every survivor knew the truth. The warship was falling, and with it the fate of Mill Creek itself. The mothership screamed as it fell, a mountain of fire tearing the sky apart. Its frame glowed red, its engines exploded one by one, and trails of smoke stretched across the dawn. The people of Mill Creek watched from the hills, their hearts pounding as the shadow of the falling beast grew larger. Children clutched their mothers, men gripped rifles, though no bullet could change what was coming. The earth shook even before it hit. With a thunder louder than storms, the warship slammed into the fields just beyond the town. The ground split, trees flattened, barns shattered into splinters. A wall of dust and fire rolled across the valley, throwing people to their knees. Windows shattered, fences bent, rivers boiled from the heat. The town of Mill Creek trembled, but it still stood. When the smoke began to clear, the sight was both terrible and powerful. The once invincible warship now lay broken, half buried in the earth, flames pouring from its torn belly. Its great wings of steel had snapped like glass, its weapons shattered. The monster of the sky was now a carcass on the ground, but it was not dead yet. From the burning wreckage crawled alien soldiers, their armor scorched, their weapons sparking, and from the torn command chamber came the alien commander himself. His body was burned, his mask cracked, but his eyes glowed with fury. He staggered forward, his claws still sharp, his voice a growl that carried even through the smoke. "You cannot kill us. We erase, we endure, we conquer." Sheriff Daniels stepped forward, his boots crunching over ash and broken steel. Behind him stood Hank, Ruth, Joe, Luke, and every survivor who could still carry a weapon. The sheriff's voice was calm, but filled with fire. "You came to erase us, but we're still here. And now you'll see what happens when you wake the wrong people." The alien soldiers charged, their weapons glowing. The people of Mill Creek roared in answer, rushing to meet them. Rifles cracked, grenades thundered, Molotovs burned through the smoke. The battle raged among the wreckage of the mothership, sparks and fire lighting the dawn. Hank swung his shotgun like a hammer, blasting one alien at close range. Ruth hurled grenades with a nurse's precision, striking squads that tried to regroup. Joe lit a fuse of dynamite and threw it into a cluster of enemies, the explosion tearing them apart. Luke controlled the hacked drone one last time, guiding it into the chest of an alien warrior before it exploded in blue fire. Every man, woman, and child fought with everything they had, their rage sharper than any weapon. At the center of it all stood the alien commander, his claws dripping green blood, his armor cracked but his strength still terrifying. He cut down a line of fighters with one swing of his glowing blade, his roar shaking the broken steel around them. He turned his burning eyes on the sheriff. "You are nothing but dirt and bone. You think your spirit matters against the stars?" The sheriff raised his rifle, steady and unshaking. "It matters here," he said. He fired, the bullet striking the commander's mask, cracking it wide. The alien stumbled, green blood spilling, but he still came forward. The sheriff dropped his empty rifle and drew the old revolver at his hip. He aimed for the heart. "This is for Mill Creek," he whispered. The shot rang out. The commander staggered. His blade dropped. His body crumpled to the ground with a final hiss, Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of fire and the hiss of burning metal. The last alien soldiers fell or fled into the smoking wreck, never to rise again. The people of Mill Creek stood among the wreckage, bloodied, burned, but alive. Their small town was shattered, their fields scorched. But their spirit stood unbroken. Children climbed onto the fallen warship, planting a torn American flag into its cracked hull. The survivors gathered, their voices low but filled with pride. They had stood against a force from the stars, and they had won. The sheriff looked at the burning wreck, his voice carrying like a promise. Let the galaxy hear this. We don't run, we don't bow. You try to erase us, we fight back harder. That's who we are. The flames of the mothership lit the morning sky, a beacon of victory. Word would spread, carried by whispers and rumors. Earth's rural warriors had faced the impossible and endured. The galaxy would remember Mill Creek not as a town erased, but as the place where invaders were broken. And as the smoke drifted into the rising sun, the people stood together, bruised, scarred, but fierce. They were no longer just farmers, mothers, children, and veterans. They were defenders of Earth, and their message burned brighter than fire. Never underestimate the warriors of the soil. Never underestimate humanity.